Hey guys, this is Urizi. Part 11 of What If Naruto Was the Son of Apollo. The summer after the quest for Artemis, Naruto has his hands full with guilt, concern and frustration. When Bianca's strange illness takes a turn for the worse, a quest is started. A relationship is strained, a hero returns, and the labyrinth is found. Join Naruto as he begins his quest for the cure and the others dive into the labyrinth. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and also check the author in the description if you liked the story. I don't want to make you wait any longer, so let's start. Chapter 11. You can't take me home, I am home. Naruto's whispered words echoed in the air to the Nara clan's head as he sat in the cell, also wondering how he could escape. Had the girl wearing gold armor not given the guards instructions to search them for weapons or anything else for that matter, they could have been out of the cell by now. How could he say that? Shikamaru returned to the other train of thought as he lifted his arms and looked at the seals painted on them. Naruto had added them in when he learned the cuffs were coming off. Whatever had happened over the past 7 years, it had changed the knucklehead dunce of the school he once knew to a smarter and far more cunning warrior. For better or worse? The man asked himself. He looked at the bars when that new language was barked out. The two guards exchanged a look before leaving the room, their armor clanking upon their movement. The door slammed shut and Shikamaru closed his eyes, thinking of ways to make use of his absent guards. You are the intruders then? A new voice asked in English, making Shikamaru's eyes snap open. Standing before him was a skinny blonde teen wearing a white sheet over a blue shirt and pants. The teen had eyes similarly blue to Naruto's, although lacking the sun that seemed to encircle his one-time friend's pupil. Who are you? Shikamaru returned with suspicion. I am the augur of Camp Jupiter, legacy of Apollo, Octavian. The teen introduced himself with a scowl. You are an enemy bested by the exile, are you not? Exile? Inquired the commander with furrowed brows. Naruto, Octavian hissed with distaste. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed before he answered, yes. You are here for him? Octavian asked, to kill him? No, the Jonin replied with a frown, to return him home. Octavian pursed his lips in thought, turning and walking to the other side of the room before he returned to the bars of the cell. You mean us no harm? When you clearly have the giants on your side? Are you a fool or are you sincerely not interested in our camp? We are here with orders to return Naruto to his home, Shikamaru answered, by any means necessary. If I were to free you, Octavian slowly began, hypothetically, of course, would you remove him without harming any of our campers? I can make no promises, but any attack on your campers would be only retaliation, Shikamaru replied. He paused before asking, tell me, who is Apollo? Blasphemous words leave your mouth. Hissed the augur, Apollo is my ancestor, god of the sun and prophecies. A god? You expect me to believe you are the descendant of a god? Shikamaru asked with a disbelieving smirk. What's next? Naruto's allies are too. They are Greek children, Octavian sneered, but still also children of the gods. You can't seriously believe this, the man replied, there's no evidence to prove. Another word from your mouth and I will rethink my offer to help you. Octavian snapped. Shikamaru frowned but closed his mouth. If this kid wanted to think he was a child of a god, then fine by him. The delusions would only turn him homicidal in the end. All he needed to do was earn the blonde's trust to get himself and his team out, and if that meant indulging in these gods, then so be it. I see you understand, Octavian said with a smirk. He reached into his sheet and withdrew a key, dropping it just outside of the bars. The augur turned to leave, saying in a feigned concern, oh woe is me, I seem to have lost my key. Shikamaru rolled his eyes and waited for the teen to leave the room before reaching out and grabbing the key. He returned to his corner of the cell, looking at the still snoring Kiba and Akamaru before thinking of how to complete his mission. Subduing the guards would be simple, it would be getting Choji up and ready to go after Naruto once again that would be hard. We will move in an hour, Shikamaru decided. As he sat atop the roof of the barracks of the 5th cohort, Naruto flipped the small medallion his father had given him up into the air, catching it in his hand before doing the act once again. Talia had returned it after dinner, telling him that she didn't need any more of his help before leaving him stunned and saddened. She was still mad at him for not telling her about Jason. Talia was actually very mad at him if all her jibes at him during dinner meant anything. I should have told her sooner, Naruto berated himself with a frown as he flipped the coin. Screw Raijiji's orders. Since when do I listen to authority? Since authority had taken control of your life, Helios said, giving his input. Shut up, Helios, thought the guardian with a scowl. Looking up at the moon, Naruto continued to think about how this quest was becoming worse. If only he could just know. He couldn't beat the fates. He tried that once, to interfere in another's fate by attempting to change his own. It didn't end well. Naruto awoke with a gasp. The last thing he remembered was the stupid fox yelling at him for sacrificing himself for a group of flesh bags. Well, he remembered that and a lot of pain in his shoulders. And in his legs for that matter. Actually, his whole body hurt. Like, a lot. He's not supposed to be here yet. An old woman exclaimed, making the blonde teenager wince at the sound of her voice. The string isn't cut. Insisted another old woman's voice, we have time to fix this. Well, that is a shame because he is here. A younger woman retorted. Naruto groaned quietly, all the yelling was giving him a headache. His groan earned the attention of the speakers, all of them looking at him. Naruto returned the looks and was surprised with what he found. 3 old ladies, all with hair whiter than snow, were staring at him in surprise, and hanging from their hands was a long string that felt very important. They were dressed in white and each looked at him unblinkingly, silver eyes staring into his own blue. Behind them stood a dark-skinned man with long dark hair, a healthy lean build that would have had a girl blushing had they seen him. His honey golden eyes were far more ancient than he appeared and an aura Naruto would have sworn was nature chakra came from him. Sitting in 2 obsidian thrones were 2 more people, a young woman that had a beauty that reminded the blonde of springtime and a man who he would have claimed was Sasuke's father, had the man been any less pale than he already was. Perhaps this was Sai's true father. Stupid boy. One of the old ladies scolded him, you have years ahead of you to go. Now look at this mess we're in. Say wa. Naruto elegantly replied. The son of Apollo was jarred from his thoughts as his spatial awareness kicked in, leaning back as he caught the medallion to avoid being struck by a kunai. Standing, Naruto rolled his neck as he slipped the medallion into one of his expanded pockets. The blonde turned to where the kunai had come from, meeting the eyes of the shinobi that stood at the other end of the barracks. You know, the second I yell the whole camp will be up at arms, informed the blonde, reaching down to uncap his kunai case. Who let you out of your kennel, dog boy? Shikamaru snatched the key from a guard, Kiba replied. He lifted his right arm and revealed the seal the blonde had left behind. All that remains is for you to take these damn seals off. Let me see if I got this straight, began the teenage blonde with his hands raised. You just escaped from a guarded cell, in a foreign military camp, and you want me, the one who subdued you and who you're trying to detain, to finish releasing you from your chain. Naruto snorted, what, do you think I'm an idiot? Wouldn't surprise me. Kiba retorted with a scowl, this is the last time I'm going to ask nicely. Take them off. Naruto vanished as soon as the opposite man's eyes blinked. He reappeared with his arm thrown over Kiba's shoulders, a kunai in his other hand aimed at the man's gut. Naruto leaned his head back, looking at the moon as it hung in the sky. Before he spoke, you really are in no place to threaten me, Kiba. You're just full of hot air, and trust me, I know what hot air looks like. Oh save it, Kiba, the blonde cut in, you and I both know that Shikamaru is waiting over on the 4th cohort's barracks, and Akamaru is carrying the still recovering Choji to the exit, which is under guard mind you. So whatever Shikamaru is planning, might as well call it off. This is the plan, stupid. Kiba snapped, flicking his wrist and revealing a kunai that was hidden in his jacket sleeve. He spun towards Naruto, bringing the kunai up to stab him in the shoulder. The blonde retracted his arm, turning out of way to avoid the strike. He ducked a wild claw strike, a classic Inuzuka move, and countered with a punch into the side of the abdomen, just a bit too low and too left to strike the solar plexus. Kiba doubled over with a gasp, letting Naruto be free to grab onto the back of the older man's flak jacket, then driving his knee up into the target he had initially missed with his punch. It's not as easy as it was on the playground, Keebs. Naruto taunted as he shoved the canine-affiliated shinobi to the side, I'm not the twiggy, underfed orphan boy who got by on food stamps anymore. The fuck are food stamps? Kiba asked as he struggled to get back up. Naruto rolled his eyes before grabbing the older man by the ears, pulling him up easily. The blonde pulled his head back before driving his forehead into Kiba's nose, earning a very satisfying crunch. As Kiba yowled in pain, Naruto looked around, eyes narrowing in thought. Oh, that clever motherfucker, praised the blonde before he closed his eyes and flared his chakra, his body reacting as it normally did when he would in the past. He started to glow. The light illuminated the area slightly, revealing a once-hidden Shikamaru watching from where Naruto had sat before this fight began. In his hand was another kunai waiting to be thrown, his eyes narrowed. Naruto stopped glowing just as quickly as he started, turning around and kicking the rising Kiba in the head. Kiba's head snapped up, falling back into blissful unconsciousness. "You figured out the key to my lock," accused the blonde, "that I can believe." "Didn't exactly make it hard to figure out. A quick application of ink that was in your supplies and poof, no more seals. Kept Kiba sealed up to keep me off my guard. Your first mistake was thinking I wouldn't notice his screams and not getting anyone's attention. A gamble I had to take," Shikamaru admitted, looking to his unconscious friend with disappointment. The man sighed and pulled out a cigarette, lighting it with a match. After a good inhale, Shikamaru asked, "What was the second giveaway? You stole a key to the cell from the guards? While having no chakra or weapons?" Naruto scoffed, "Please. I learned the hard way how not to rely on chakra all the time. It makes things too easy, until it becomes impossible to use. And you, being the lazy ass you are, wouldn't have been able to overpower two well-trained Romans. Especially while in a cell, and?" Shikamaru asked, his eyebrow arching in interest. "You had help," Naruto concluded. Approaching the smoking shinobi, Naruto continued, "Someone, I don't know who or why, but someone helped you escape. And the worst part of it is, I know Konoha didn't send you back up. I would have sensed it." "Bullshit. No, really I would've," the blonde insisted. "There's no one outside of the hidden lands that uses chakra like we do. Practically everyone here is a civilian. Less than in some cases. Trust me, I would have felt it if you had backup. So that means someone in this camp has decided to willingly assist an enemy of the state. And the only reason I can think of someone doing that is me." Shikamaru remained quiet, content with taking another drag of his cigarette. There was more silence for a while before Naruto spoke. "You want me to go back to Konoha with you, correct?" The Jonin nodded slowly, his brow furrowing. "All right then," Naruto shrugged. "The fact someone was willing to betray Camp Jupiter just to get rid of me proves that I'm more of a problem here than I thought. I have some business back at Konoha that has to be settled anyway." "Just like that?" Shikamaru asked suspiciously. Fuck no, not just like that," Naruto retorted with a scowl. "You're going to be my tickets back into Konoha." "What? You officially have two options," Naruto snapped. "Option 1, best option, I go back to Konoha the same way you got here, quick, quiet and unseen. No more fighting, no more fuss. I don't suppose you'd appreciate being handcuffed," deadpanned the Jonin. "Gee, what made you think that?" Sarcastically replied the Guardian, "No restraints, or I will show you how badly I held back against Choji." "Unfortunately, I believe you," Shikamaru admitted before sighing. "Troublesome blonde." "I try," Naruto said with a smirk before raising two fingers. "Option 2, worst decision. You deny my offer to come peacefully, I sound the alarm and you, as well as the rest of your squad get killed before the night is done. That leaves you here," Shikamaru said with a frown. "I know most of the ways to get to Konoha, but you wouldn't believe me," Naruto said, crossing his arms. "I'm curious as to how you got here." "Sue me." Shikamaru stared at his younger opponent, his mind racing. Seconds of silence felt like hours were passing for Naruto, his body tense and ready to retaliate if Shikamaru decided to be difficult. Now, normally he'd be against going back to Konoha altogether, beating the ever-loving shit out of the shinobi and call it a day, but he had been thinking about how the quest had been so far. Sooner or later he'd have to go to Konoha to get the cure for Bianca's illness from the Shadow Slug. So, why not do it on his terms instead of someone else's? "Fine." Shikamaru's voice earned Naruto's full attention, allowing the blonde to grin as the genius continued. "Just one thing first, who's Apollo?" Naruto had to fight down the urge to laugh at the poor foreigner's face from the question. The blonde couldn't suppress the grin that threatened to cross his face, though. Shaking his head, Naruto looked up at the moon, grin still plastered on his face as he spoke. "The guy that let you out, was he tall, skinny and blonde?" "Yeah." "His name was Octavian," Naruto interrupted with a shake of his head. Running a hand through his messy blonde locks, he growled, "That son of a bitch. He reminds me of you," Shikamaru said, getting a glare from the blonde. "Physically. He acts more like Sasuke would have had he, not gone crazy." "Definitely that stupid Harrispex," Naruto growled. Holding a hand up, Naruto said, "Before we go, one quick thing." Taliya woke up as she went to bed, pissed off. She was pissed off at her boyfriend for hiding her brother. She was pissed off at her boyfriend for not telling off Reina for flirting with him. She was pissed off at her boyfriend for not telling her anything about this stupid quest. Damn it, Taliya growled to herself as she rolled out of the cot she was assigned. She was pissed off that Naruto didn't come wake her up again. Instead, she was woken up by a loud alarm that echoed through the camp. Grabbing her jacket from the hanger as she left the barracks, Taliya raised a hand to shield herself from the unnaturally bright sunlight. There was a lot of shouting and several armored teens were running across the previous day's calm roads. Taliya! The raven-haired girl turned at the sound of her name and found Piper running up to her, still dressed as she was the day before. "Piper," Taliya greeted, "any idea what was going on?" "Not a clue," the younger girl replied before asking, "Do you know what a dream about a dove and an eagle flying together means?" "Talking to the wrong person," Taliya replied before stopping a passing Roman. "Hey, what's going on?" "The prisoners have escaped and Legionnaire Uzumaki is missing," the Roman replied. "The praetors are by the holding cells." "I figured you'd want to talk to Jason next." "Smart kid," Taliya complimented, getting a salute, before looking at Piper. "Come on." The two immediately went to the holding cells, outside of which they immediately found two tall Roman teens getting scolded by Jason while Reina shook her head in disbelief. The blonde teen turned to face them at Reina's nudge, greeting his older sister with a grin. He turned and said something to the Romans in Latin, causing the two to quickly flee. Looking back at his sister, Jason asked, "So, do you want to hear the good news or bad news?" "Bad news, the prisoners broke out and Naruto is missing," Taliya summed up with ease. Jason nodded, "Yep, and the good news?" Taliya asked. Reina held up one of Naruto's tri-pronged kunai. Naruto didn't leave without a fight. Snatching the weapon from the girl crushing on her boyfriend, Taliya looked at it. She turned the unique kunai over in her hands a few times before noticing something being off with the handle. A flap of the handle was peeling off, prompting her to carefully undo what was being done, reversing what she had done before when chasing the draken. "What are you doing?" Reina demanded. "You're ruining his weapon." "I'm reading the message," corrected the daughter of Zeus as she continued to unroll a small slip of paper. She handed the knife to Piper and read the message that Naruto had left behind. Her brows furrowed before she read the message aloud. "Ask Octavian." Jason and Reina shared a look and began speaking in hushed Latin. Jason became angry, stopping a passing girl by grabbing her by the arm and ordering her to do something relating to Octavian. The girl nodded and rushed off, leaving Jason to round back on Reina. "I told you he's been getting power hungry." "Most do, but he's our only augur," Reina countered. "Without him, there's no excuse for releasing enemies within the camp, endangering all of us for personal gain." Jason ranted. "Who endangered us?" Octavian asked as he approached the gathered four. Jason took a step towards him, stopped only by Reina's hand. "Don't play games, Octavian." Jason snapped, "You released the prisoners and now they've captured one of us." "I don't care for your accusations, Jason," Octavian retorted before shifting his gaze to Taliya and Piper. "And why are they here?" "This is a camp concern, isn't it?" "They are here because their friend is missing," the blonde praetor said, "and the guards for last night told both Reina and myself you had ordered them to step outside." "You seem awfully eager to jump at the words of two members of the 5th cohort," replied the augur with a scowl. "It was two members of the 5th that were on watch, correct? Are you accusing my soldiers, no, my friends, of lying to me?" Jason asked as his eyes narrowed. "Well, they have always been jealous of the 1st cohort," Octavian said. "What better way to get back at us by getting me, a centurion of the 1st cohort?" "Jason," Reina warned the blonde as he tensed and prepared to make a move against the augur. Jason's fists were clenched and he was fighting down the anger he felt for Octavian. He was proud of being a member of the 5th cohort and how far they had come. Jason was not entirely sure he deserved all the credit to the 5th cohort's slow return to Jupiter's grace. He wouldn't have been as strong as he was had Naruto not shown up those 5 years ago. Jason had learned from the older blonde many things, but the one lesson Naruto pounded, literally in some cases, into his head was that of never leaving comrades behind. It was what he had started to drill into the other members of the 5th cohort. They probably were not the most prestigious cohort of the Legion, but they were now the most efficient. "Octavian," Reina began, "not only have the guards spoken to us, but we received a message from Naruto, telling us to ask you." "Well, he and I don't get along," Octavian said, "and we displayed that loud enough to be heard throughout the camp yesterday. Even the guards must have talked about it." The prisoners must have forged his handwriting. It's written in Greek, Talia informed him, turning the note around for Octavian to see, and those invaders only just learned English. How do you know? Octavian countered with a scowl in her direction. Maybe those invaders came from closer to home than you think. Are you implying that we're behind this? Talia asked as her eyes narrowed. Octavian smirked. Those are your words. Greek. Before either of the angry Grace siblings could speak, there was a bright flash of light. Those around the area, once the light had faded, immediately knelt down and bowed their heads. Jason, Reina, and even Octavian bowed their heads in respect for the being that stood before them. Piper and Talia, however, just stared in disbelief. Phoebus, Apollo had expensive sunglasses covering his eyes and was wearing an expensive business suit. He had a cell phone pressed against his ear and was talking animatedly into it. Yeah. No, yeah, I understand, Vinny. I just need you to understand that I haven't got time for you to get indecisive about doing another sequel. Alright, listen, we have got to talk about this later. That up-and-comer is on the other line. Ciao, bud. Hanging up the phone, Apollo sighed as he looked up before looking over at the two praetors. Rolling his eyes, he waved his hand. Oh, everyone just get up. Where's the Greek girls? He turned around and found the both of them staring at him. Extending his arms, Apollo said, "Ah, well, fantastic. We're all here then. The Greeks, the golden boy of Juno, and the sneak." Apollo turned around and faced Octavian. You betrayed this camp. I didn't do anything. Octavian stammered, ducking his head. Forgive me, father. Apollo's eyes narrowed. You released enemy forces into this camp with the sole intent to get some petty vengeance on one of your own. He was in exile. I did not say you could speak, Apollo snapped. You have felt comfort for far too long, Octavian. You've abused your place as augur, and you have disgraced my lineage. No, please, Octavian groveled. Please, I can do better. Don't take this from me, augury is all I know. Placing a hand on the pale teen's head, Apollo smiled as he spoke. I would never take away such a gift. You love your prophecies more than you do your status, am I right? Yes. Phoebus. Apollo's cold eyes warmed slightly before hardening. His hand clenched around Octavian's head and calmly, the Roman aspect of Apollo said, allow me to hone your gift, then. Octavian's eyes widened and he started to scream in agony. His hands went to the side of his head, just shy of touching Apollo's hand. The pale teen stopped screaming, resorting to begging, no more. Take it back. This is your punishment for going against my wishes, Apollo snapped, the prophecy you were to give Jason today. Give it to him. Octavian released another cry of agony, prompting Apollo to squeeze harder, said. Tell him. The augur squeezed his eyes tight, as though having an inner debate, before he opened his mouth once more. Jupiter's child rides soul's steed. To a hidden world a friend is freed. The man with two faces attacks above. Rescue comes from an eagle and dove. Apollo shone brightly and retracted his hand. Octavian collapsed, curling in on himself and starting to speak incoherently, switching between Latin and English in an impossibly fast pace. Talia put herself between her boyfriend's father and Piper, not used to this side of a god. Her own father's decision to turn her into a tree notwithstanding, and the mockery of a vote last winter, that was the first time she had seen a god really punish someone. Get him out of here, Apollo said to two Romans. They acted quickly, rushing to help the incoherent augur up. As he stood, Octavian shoved himself out of their grasp and went to Jason, grasping the blonde by the shoulders. If you go, your life will change forever. Octavian hissed with madness in his eyes, the changes will spread and burn all that made this camp what it is. Get off me. Jason snapped, shoving the weaker teen off. Put him in a cell. Throw the book at him. Apollo added as the two Romans addressed earlier took the augur away. Taking off his sunglasses, Apollo used a piece of cloth retrieved from his pockets to clean the lenses. The god looked at the praetors, his piercing blue eyes locking on those of Jason's before he spoke with a grin. Looks like we have a lunch date. Chapter 12. So who likes Tex-Mex? I could go for a chimichanga, Apollo said as he led the teens into the dining area. The few already there quickly vacated when they pieced together who Apollo was. The blond man frowned at one of the tables of the barracks dining pavilion. With a simple wave of his hand, the table had changed into one that could be seen at a restaurant, complete with tablecloth, rolled napkins around silverware and placemats for them. Apollo took the now lush and expensive-looking dining chair that could arguably be called the head of the table, leaning back with a content sigh. "It's not the Ritz, but it's comfy," he said. The god then gestured to the other chairs, "Take a seat, ladies." "And Jason?" Jason rolled his eyes as he did, sitting across from Talia. Reina sat next to her fellow praetor while Piper claimed the spot next to the older Grace. Talia warily kept an eye on the god of the sun, who was looking at the four teens with a serious gaze. He then looked at their empty placemats. "No Tex-Mex, then?" "Something else, perhaps?" "We should really discuss why you're here," Jason said, almost insistent. Apollo sent him a look of annoyance before rolling his eyes with a huff. "I try to be nice, and this is how I'm repaid." "It's not that, Lord Apollo," Reina said, "but we have urgent matters to attend to. Prisoners from another land have escaped and Naruto Uzumaki is dash." "I know where he is," Apollo interrupted. The four teens looked at him and he smirked. "Yes, I figured that would garner your attentions. Now, Jason, you have a quest to ride Soul's steed, correct?" "Yes, you insisted that Octavian give me the quest," reminded the son of Jupiter. "Technically, yes I did," nodded the god of the sun. He then looked to the Greek side of the table and spoke with a thinly veiled tolerance. "Now as for you two. You will be accompanying him because of your part in Naruto's prophecy." "We have a part in Naruto's prophecy?" Talia asked with surprise. "Great, even more things are being revealed that Naruto had kept hidden. She didn't even receive the full prophecy, just little hints." "I'm not surprised that he didn't tell you," replied Apollo. "It was a unique prophecy, one given to him by Helios." Talia felt her jaw pop open slightly. Really? Do you think I would lie about that?" the god asked. Apollo snorted before reaching into his pocket and pulling out his phone. He fiddled with the device for a moment before he spoke. "Here we are." The god pressed a button and placed the phone down. The prophecy was read by the voice of a woman. "A life risked for the Ghost King's precious one. The family reunites after the Roman attacks the sun." "That's already happened," Reina said with a hint of disgust in her voice. "To think one of Bacchus' children would be a traitor." 3. Take the fire steed neither west nor east. The pinwheel spiral blade revives the leaf-dreaded beast. "The first part obviously relates to us," Jason said, gesturing to Talia and Piper as well as himself. "Just wait," Apollo said with a raised hand, "there's still more. Rescue comes from the power of lightning and thunder. The shadow slug defeats death with a gift of wonder. After the guardian's past returns twice more. 2 brothers shall fall during the labyrinth war." The phone clicked off and Apollo retrieved it, stuffing it back into his pocket. He looked around the table before he spoke. "Listen. Normally, I just let these things run their course, last winter aside. However, this was a prophecy devised by someone outside of my circle. When I caught wind of it, I decided to issue my own prophecy to you, Jason." Leaning forward to the boy, he continued, "I want you to bring my son back from the place he was taken. Rescue comes from the power of lightning and thunder." Piper's voice earned everyone's attention. "What?" "The prophecy is talking about Jason and Talia. The only thing I can't figure out is where I fit in." "Really?" inquired the girl seated on Jason's left, Lady of the Doves. "Charm speaking. You're obviously a daughter of Venus." "Aphrodite," Apollo corrected sternly and looked as though he swallowed something sour. "Little McLean here is Greek." "The goddess of love is my mother?" Piper asked in surprise. She didn't see that coming, especially with how tomboyish she is. Wasn't she supposed to be a total love-obsessed girl in that case? "Yeah, Naruto had a theory on that one," Talia added. The raven-haired girl continued as the pieces fell in place. "So you are the dove in the prophecy Jason got. Alright, now that we have this titling revelation out of the way, shall we get a move on?" inquired the sun god. The teens all stood and began to leave the dining pavilion. Apollo stopped Talia, placing a hand on her shoulder. When the others looked at him, he smiled reassuringly. "Will only be a second, just a few words of advice from my son's girlfriend." Jason was the last to leave, but the second he did the door of the dining pavilion shut. Apollo removed his hand and walked around Talia, glaring down to her with his arms crossed. After a few moments of tense silence and shifting uncomfortably under the god's gaze, Talia finally broke. "What do you want?" "I want many things," Apollo said in a crisp tone, "but from you I would like it if you broke it off with my son." "Excuse me?" Talia asked. She faltered for words before finding her voice once again. you're the one that tricked us into a fucking dance at Christmas. Oh Grace, little Miss Talia Grace, let me explain, Apollo began, you see, that was my Greek self, my stupid self. I'm Roman right now. Talia just gave him a confused look, prompting the god to cup his chin. How should I put this? Elvis has left the building is an appropriate phrase. But you're standing right here, the raven-haired girl stated. Oh order, why is this so difficult? Said Apollo as he pinched the bridge of his nose in frustration. Lowering his hand, the god of the sun said, alright, I'll put it like Naruto would. The gods have multiple personality disorder, one is Greek and the other is Roman. Get it? Talia slowly nodded, making Apollo exhale in relief. Thank us. Tell me why you don't want me to be with Naruto, Talia bluntly demanded. The Roman god of the sun snorted, why? I'll tell you why. He's going to outgrow you, Talia. At the end of this war with the Crooked One, the Olympians are going to offer him a place amongst the gods. Why would they offer him that? Asked the girl in confusion and a bit of envy. Apollo shook his head as his hands went to his waist. Oh, it's so sad how sincerely confused you are. Why would we offer him a place amongst us? Hello. He's got the soul of a god and the strength of one to boot. He bested and disarmed Atlas, a feat not many can declare. Naruto even managed to slip him back into his punishment, a sleight of hand that thieving Greek god would be envious of. Talia admitted that it was an impressive bit of info to put on his resume, but still Naruto wouldn't have originally disarmed Atlas without Zoe's help, something she brought up. But what about when Zoe helped him? As a subordinate should do when their commander is in trouble. Apollo waved the claim off. As far as I'm concerned, Naruto is already worthy. But where would that leave you? A silly little Greek with, what's the female equivalent of a bastard? I don't have to take this from you. Talia snapped, her cheeks flushed and her eyes sparking with rage. Never said you did, agreed Apollo. His eyes hardened as they narrowed, but I still want you to call it off. Weren't you going to anyway? After you found out he kept your brother a secret? Maybe that's not the only thing he's keeping from you. The raven-haired demigoddess just stood there glaring at him for a moment before storming around him and out the door. She couldn't dispute that since it was one of the things she dreaded the most, that there was something even worse Naruto was keeping from her. What could be worse than hiding Jason? Talia wasn't sure, but the fact remains that it was something she really needed to address when she spoke to Naruto. Phoebus Apollo smirked in victory before his form shone brightly once more, revealing the Greek Apollo standing in all of his surfer attire glory. Whipping his head around in confusion, Apollo scratched the back of his head and mumbled, I have the strangest feeling that I totally just threw someone under a bus for some reason. Man, if my douchebag side said something to Arte again, I'll never hear the end of it for a millennia. Apollo shone once more and Phoebus stood in his place. With nothing else to say, he calmly stepped out of the pavilion, slipping his sunglasses back on. Talia refused to look at him, which he was perfectly fine with. Jason took note of his sister's upset features and put a hand on her shoulder. Hey, you alright? I'm fine. Talia snapped, jerking herself out of his grip. Jason wanted to pursue the subject, because clearly she was not fine, but was unable to due to suddenly being blinded by a bright flash of light. When the light died down, the son of Jupiter was in awe at what was before him. Strapped to a golden horse that appeared to be made of fire was a golden chariot that had a Greek sun engraved on the front. ISS that horse on fire? Piper asked in concern for the creature's state. It's Zephyr, Talia said, her surprise at seeing the fiery steed overcoming her other emotions. The horse whinnied at his name, prompting Talia to continue, he's a spirit of fire that once belonged to Helios. He's Naruto's now, Apollo interjected, approaching the horse and patting him on the side. Do me a solid, Zephyr, help these kids get Naruto back. Zephyr whinnied and nodded his head excitedly, making the god of the sun nod. He turned to the three teens and said, you got the go-ahead. Get on and hold on tight. Talia, Piper and Jason did as they were told, the older child of the thunder god glaring at her boyfriend's father as she passed. Jason took the reins in his hand, preparing to crack them when Piper asked, how are we going to stay in the chariot? Hold on to the edge, Talia suggested as she realized what type of transportation she just got onto. Her eyes squeezed shut and she clenched her fist tightly onto the edge. Piper saw this and copied the older girl. As they took off towards the sky, Apollo stepped back to stand next to Reyna. Glancing at the other praetor, the Roman god said, don't let the daughter of Zeus beat you so easily. And increase the training drills. War is coming, Mars grows restless. He left before Reyna could speak, feeling as though his purpose was done, leaving the praetor to wonder what the god of the sun had meant by his first statement. Ugh, I think I'm going to be sick, Talia groaned as she barely avoided looking over the edge of the chariot. I thought that the chariot would be something with a seat? Sol's chariot hasn't been seen or used since the rise of Rome, Jason said calmly. What did Apollo say the spirit's name was? Zephyr, Piper repeated, getting the horse to whinny at his name. Well, it sure is as beautiful as he is. But I thought that was the Greek god of the west wind. Trust me, I've met that god, Talia snapped. He's definitely not a horse. Jason looked over his shoulder at his sister. You alright? I hate heights, Talia grit out as she managed to glare at her little brother. Taking the hint, Jason looked forward, mumbling, didn't think it was that bad. Where are we going anyway? The younger demigoddess asked. North. South, Talia corrected, it feels like we're going south. Now can we please stop talking about what we're doing? Piper took the hint, deciding to quickly change the subject to hopefully a better topic. So, how did Naruto come to Camp Jupiter? Most likely the usual way, Jason answered. He trained with Lupa for a bit before being sent to camp as a probationary camper of no rank in our army. But when we were looking for him, the guy who sent us to you called him a legionnaire, continued the daughter of Aphrodite. Did something change? It's a long story, Jason said as he looked forward. It was during my 3rd year as a legionnaire, when I became a centurion, for the 5th cohort that Naruto arrived. He was not the average Roman. He's not the average guy either, Piper admitted, grinning at Talia slyly. Or is he? Overstepping your grounds, Talia warned before groaning as she relaxed her eyes for a split second, closing them immediately. Jason, story, tell it. Now. Okay, replied the younger Grace. I saw him from time to time, the occasional passing in the 5th cohort, but I was different then. Arrogant because of who my father was, a kind of no-nonsense guy. In other words, you had a stick up your ass, Talia bluntly summarized. You and Naruto are so meant to be, Jason retorted dryly. He said the same thing during our first sparring match before the weekly siege battle. Jason stood across from the older blonde, eyes narrowed in thought as the older teen rolled his neck, excessively delaying the battle that was to come. Gritting his teeth, Jason cried out, are you so cowardly that you wish to delay your own demise? The teen currently stretching his arm across his chest paused in his action, tilting his head in thought before replying, nope. I couldn't honestly give a damn if I lose here. If you lose here, you are denied admission into the siege. Jason snapped, furious at how disrespectful the older boy was being. You are a probatio, the fact I am fighting you should make this all the more serious. And I should care who you are because, why? Naruto asked as his brow arched. I am Jason Grace, son of Jupiter, centurion of the 5th cohort. Announced the boy proudly. I am your superior and you will respect me. Respect is earned, kid, replied the blonde with a snort, and so far, you have done nothing to earn mine. Then I'll fix that. Jason snapped, pulling his coin out and flipping it in the air. It descended and landed in his hand, the face of Julius Caesar looking back at him. The coin shone brightly before revealing an imperial gold sword, ready and willing to attack. Naruto rolled his eyes, shaking his arms before bringing up his right arm, revealing a golden band with a gleaming red jewel in the center. Naruto opened his mouth, and then suddenly changed his mind, lowering his arm and slipping back on his right leg. The blonde suddenly looked up and said, you ever just watch the clouds? Wonder how they move. I will not be made a fool. Jason announced, begin the match. Nah. Naruto interlocked his hands behind his head as he looked up. I'd rather watch the clouds, maybe see how long I can stare into the sun. Then I will begin the match. Snapped the younger blonde. Jason rushed forward, bringing his sword up to attack. When he brought it down, his eyes widened as Naruto just vanished. Jason found his sword was still lodged in a portion of a log that was sliced nearly in half. Too slow, Jay, teased the older boy from behind the younger blonde. Jason angrily grabbed the log, pulling his sword out and tossing the fallen bit of wood away. He spun around with an angry slash, slicing the air. Oh! The blonde laughed out, making Jason grind his teeth in frustration. Something tapped his shoulder, prompting Jason to spin in the opposite direction in hopes of catching the older teen off guard. Once again he hit nothing, making the centurion growl. Why so serious, kid? Laughed out the older teen in a way that his voice sounded like it came from everywhere. You're what? 10. Relax and enjoy life. The only thing I care about is the Legion's success. Jason snapped, "That's all that matters." "Wrong thing to say to me, kid," retorted the blonde from right behind Jason. There was a plopping sound and then Jason cringed as something slick penetrated his ear. Naruto laughed as he pulled his finger out, causing Jason to furiously start wiping at it. The older blonde laughed, standing in front of the younger one, "Wet Willy, you are an embarrassment to the Legion." Jason snapped with a glare. "You need to lighten up," Naruto replied with a grin. Jason growled and swung his sword at the teen, making Naruto laugh as he kept hopping out of the way, taunting with each miss. "Oh, you were so close, just then. Nearly got me that time. Try and put some back into it." Jason stopped, panting and glaring at the hardly out-of-breath teen. "Fight back, damn you. You want me to get serious?" Naruto asked, "Is that what you want? Fight me?" demanded the younger blonde, his face one of fury. "All right then, all you had to do was ask," Naruto said. "Then he vanished," Jason said, "and I don't remember anything after it." Talia noticed Jason's shoulder twitch as he said that, and she smirked. He had gotten her to ignore what they were currently doing with his story, and for that, Talia was grateful. However, he had teased her about it. As Naruto would put it, payback was a necessary evil. So the raven-haired teenage girl leaned forward and whispered into her brother's ear, "Senin Goroshi." Instinctively, Jason flinched and pulled on the reins, causing the chariot to rise. He struggled to retain control while both Talia and Piper screamed in surprise. Jason pulled the reins back and called out the steed's name, making Zephyr steady himself. Jason, panting heavily, turned and looked at his terrified-looking sister. Through gritted teeth, Jason said, "Do not ever say those words again." "Yeah, I figured that out, thanks." Talia snapped back as she tried to regain control of her racing heart. "What did she say?" Piper asked curiously. "A move Naruto had used on me," Jason answered after a beat of silence. The blonde teen shuddered as he thought about it. "A move I wish upon no one, enemies included." "Oh come on. All he does is poke you in the ass," Talia exclaimed. Jason glared at her. "It's an invasion of personal privacy. How do you know what it is?" Piper asked the older girl. "He used it on my cousin Percy during a training session," Talia explained. At Piper's furrowed brow, Talia clarified, "He's the son of Poseidon." "Ah," Piper said with a nod of understanding. "Strangest thing was the sick grin Naruto had on his face before he used it," Talia added. "That grin was the last thing I saw before it happened," Jason mumbled as another shiver went down his spine. Shaking the horrible memory away, Jason looked down through the clouds with furrowed brows. The blonde's eyes widened and he gasped, earning Talia and Piper's attentions. Letting go of the reins with one hand, Jason pointed down and said, We're flying over Antarctica." "No way!" Piper exclaimed as she looked over the edge in awe. They had only been in the chariot for 10 minutes. "Don't care," Talia stated flatly as her eyes closed again, "just tell me when we're back on the ground." That seemed to be the magical sentence, because Zephyr suddenly climbed up before diving back down. The three teens in the chariot screamed in fear for their lives as they rapidly descended through the clouds. Zephyr whinnied once again once they broke through, and before them was a massive walled city. To the south of the village was a large mountainside with 5 faces, 4 men and 1 woman. They were not falling towards it, thankfully. No, the 3 chariot riders and the fiery steed were heading for a large building that looked almost like a school. Jason pulled back on the reins hard enough to force Zephyr from driving them through the wall of the building, instead crashing them into the ground outside. The 3 teens lost the little balance that they had left and fell out of the chariot as the doors to the building were thrown open. The chariot's attachments to Zephyr came undone and the burning horse reeled back on his hind legs, whinnying in success as the chariot burst into flame and vanished in the wind. "I'm going to kill that horse," Talia raged as she got to her feet. The horse in question shot past her, making her spin around and prepare to attack only to gape at what she saw. "Zephyr!" A familiar voice cried out in surprise as the horse tackled him to the ground once again. Getting his face licked by a fiery tongue was none other than Naruto Uzumaki, son of Apollo. He was wearing a new shirt, an orange tee with a large black arrow pointing up that fitted to his chest, and most likely new pants by the darker shade on them, the same battle sandals on his feet he often wore. It was at that point Talia remembered that he also had hers and Piper's clothes sealed away. Something she was hell-bent on getting back. "Naruto! Namikaze-sama!" It was then Talia realized that men and women wearing light body armor and white animal masks surrounded her, her brother and Piper. As Naruto pushed the overly affectionate Zephyr off of him, Taliah caught sight of a tanned man standing behind the blonde. He had his brown hair pulled up in a ponytail and a scar across the bridge of his nose. He wore the attire of the men that had attacked them outside Amphitheatris, putting Taliah on edge. "I'm okay," Naruto said to the man with the cut across his nose. He turned and lightly patted Zephyr on his emblazed neck. "I'm good." He turned to look at the other three and nodded. "Hey Jay, nice landing." Jason wiped his hand across his mouth, checking for blood, before flipping the blonde off. "Load of kindness, aren't you?" Naruto mumbled before grinning at Taliah. "Taliah-chan, you flew all the way out here for me?" "Didn't have much of a choice in the matter," snipped the girl with a frown. Naruto winced at the tone. He decided to not aggravate his girlfriend further and smiled at Piper. "Did you enjoy the ride, Dove?" "Your dad told me who my mother is," Piper replied before smiling at Zephyr, "but I did have fun. He's a very good ride and a pretty awesome horse." Zephyr turned to Naruto, transmitting his thoughts freely to his master. "I like this girl, master. May I give her a gift?" "You don't need my permission," Naruto replied with a smile. Grinning at the girl, he said, "Hold out your hand. Zephyr has a gift for you." Piper furrowed her brow in confusion but did as Naruto said, extending her right hand. Then suddenly the space above her hand burst into flame, forging a curved blade about 7 inches in length, the handle just 2 inches long. It was a beautifully golden blade with a Greek sun engraved on either side. Piper held the blade in her hand, running the other over the engraved symbol. "Well, it's almost official now," Naruto said, gaining her attention. "All that's left is the claiming ceremony at Camp Half-Blood." "Namikaze-sama, I must insist we take the intruders in for questioning," a masked warrior said, getting Naruto to look at him. "Do you remember what happened to Owl when he tried to apprehend me?" Naruto inquired. The warrior nodded his head, prompting Naruto to narrow his gaze into a glare as he continued, "Then you would do best to leave them be. If you so much as look at them wrong, I will put you down. Understand?" The warrior stiffened at the threat before vanishing in explosions of smoke. Naruto exhaled in relief and patted the concerned spirit on the head. "I'm all right. Thank you, Zephyr, you may leave." "Cannot leave, master, not again." "May I stay, master?" pleaded the fiery horse as it nudged Naruto's hand. The blonde demigod's whiskered cheeks pulled back into a grin and he affectionately rubbed the horse spirit on the head. "Naruto," began the man that stood behind him. Naruto turned to the man, his hand not leaving Zephyr's head as he did, prompting him to continue. Who are they?" Chapter 13. As the other 3 demigods rejoined the blonde, Naruto chuckled sheepishly as his class sensei stared intently at him. Scratching the back of his head, ignoring Zephyr's head butting against his other hand, the blonde demigod said, Sorry about that, Irika-sensei. These are my friends I was telling you about earlier." "I see," the man, Irika, said with suspicion. He looked from Naruto and back to the others before grinning welcomingly at them. "Well, a friend of Naruto's is a friend of mine. Pleasure to meet you, I am Yumino Irika." "Irika Yumino," Naruto corrected, family name last. "Strange," the teacher said as he processed the information. He then looked to the group expectantly. After a moment of awkward silence had passed, Naruto palmed his head and then gestured to each individual. "This is Taliah Grace, my girlfriend," Naruto said, retrieving his hand from Zephyr's head to put it on Taliah's shoulder. The daughter of Zeus' eyes widened as she recognized the man's name. "You're the Scarface teacher that always overreacted to his pranks." Irika sheepishly scratched the back of his neck. "Well, I guess. Though overreacting is a bit of a stretch. You tied me up for putting a whoopee cushion on your chair," Naruto deadpanned, making Piper and Jason snicker while Taliah smirked at the thought. "You tried to use the distraction as a means of escape," Irika countered. The blonde demigod opened his mouth but sighed as he failed to come up with a good retort. He settled on letting out a defeated touche. Excuse you?" Irika unsurely replied, not familiar with the word. "No, touche is a French word that—" "Never mind, I'll explain it later," Naruto groaned. He then gestured to the other blonde of the 4 teens. "This is her younger brother, Jason Grace." Jason nodded curtly, uncomfortable in being within a foreign land limiting his response. He had his left hand in his pocket, grasping his coin Julius and rubbing his thumb over it to ease his nerves. Irika seemed to notice his tension, simply smiling in a welcoming manner. "Hello Jason-san. And finally we have the charming Piper McLean," Naruto introduced the girl with a grin. Piper rolled her eyes before offering her hand to the teacher, who took it with a small smile. He opened his mouth to speak when the bells of the school began to ring, making him groan as he retracted his hand. "Let's try and meet up after school, maybe you could show your friends around," Irika suggested. He bowed partially to the group before disappearing back into the building. "Well, that was a bust. There goes my free ramen," the blonde mumbled as he started to walk away from the school. Talia stopped him, grabbing him by the shoulder and making him pout as she forced him to turn around. "We flew here to rescue you," Talia grit out, making Naruto wince at the reminder of her fear. With a glare, she continued, "Why does it look like you don't need rescuing?" "Oh, you gonna be in trouble," Helios sang before he burst into laughter. "Screw you," Naruto mentally retorted as he sheepishly laughed. Reaching up and rubbing the back of his neck, his other hand coming up to stop Zephyr from headbutting him again, the blonde said, "Guess you got my message then?" "Yeah, and your dad paid us a visit. He practically ordered us to come here," Talia continued with narrowed eyes. "Now why is it that you decide to keep lying to me, Naruto?" "Hey, I never lied to you." Naruto's argument died as his girlfriend threw a thumb over her shoulder to point at Jason, making his point moot. "So, where would you like to be buried? Here or New York?" Helios asked. "No one asked you." Naruto shot back as he started to fumble with sentences. Talia's eyes narrowed. "All right then, answer me this, why haven't you tried to escape yet?" She inquired with a bit of bite to her voice. Well, technically, I can leave whenever I want," Naruto replied with a small nervous laugh afterwards. Talia gave him a glare that could have rivaled her father's when angry and then proceeded to start chewing him out, ranting about how she was forced to fly on an open chariot that she could have fallen off of while he was just wasting time making lunch dates. Piper and Jason watched with wide eyes, as the daughter of Zeus seemed to get bigger while Naruto continued to shrink under her scolding. Even poor Zephyr dimmed at the girl's wrath, ducking behind his terrified master. Thankfully, just as Talia lost her first wind, Jason came to his rescue. "Why don't you tell us what happened before we got here?" "I could kiss you, Jason, though I think that would start a lot of rumors and/or a fan club," the older blonde commented as he pointed at a group of giggling schoolgirls walking past them. Talia glowered at them, making them rush past even faster, while Jason blinked in confusion. Naruto saw this and continued, "The girls in my homeland have either two settings when it comes to good-looking guys kissing: squeal in ecstasy or rage at the unfairness of the world." "Sounds like a clique," Piper commented with a bit of annoyance. She didn't have the best experiences with cliques, even before her dad became a big screen star. That and the girls in cliques annoyed the ever-living hell out of her. They were just a bunch of whiny high-pitched idiots. "Wouldn't know," Naruto shrugged before stumbling as Zephyr butted him in the shoulder. Looking to his steed, Naruto said, "Zephyr, stop doing that. If you want to stick around you have to stop headbutting me." "Sorry master," the spirit apologized. "Stop calling me master," Naruto mumbled as he pat Zephyr on the head. Ahem, Talia cleared her throat to get her boyfriend's attention. Her arms were crossed and she was looking at him expectantly. The son of Apollo sheepishly laughed once more before sighing. "All right, it went like this," Naruto began. Kiba glared at Naruto as he began unfolding a large parchment on the ground. "Why isn't he restrained?" "He's a traitor. You want to personally get introduced to the dirt again?" Naruto asked as his brow arched. The dog-like warrior snarled before returning to his task. Shikamaru took a drag of his cigarette while he watched Kiba unroll a large parchment. "Last year we got an A-ranked mission. One that came with instructions on how to leave the elemental nations." "How?" Naruto asked. "How did you leave?" "There was a cave at the base of the Hokage monument, leading to the abandoned root headquarters. We found an exit there," Shikamaru explained as he placed a few rocks on the corners of the paper. "Next the exit there was a triangle, which we assumed Danzo had carved into the wall and used to escape trial." "Trial?" Naruto inquired curiously. "It appears that Danzo Shimura blackmailed Itachi Uchiha into slaughtering his clan according to the evidence we found," Shikamaru mused aloud, "making him a traitor to the state since he went against the direct orders of the Sandaime Hokage. For a shinobi, that was a pretty stupid move," Naruto mused. "Agreed," the older shinobi said as he exhaled some smoke, "but I digress." The mission was accepted by Team Guy and Kakashi, with Guy's team staying near the employer while Kakashi's squad explored. "That explains a bit," Naruto mused. "So they were away for what, months?" "It took them about 5 months to reach their destination," Shikamaru explained, "and none of them remembered the original route. The employer wiped it from their minds and the entrance was lost when the route tried to retake their base." Thankfully, Kakashi marked their exit point with a reverse summoning seal, which is where we arrived from. Where did you arrive? Asked the blonde prisoner, curiously. A small island with a large empty building on it, replied the smoking shinobi. It looked like a massive prison. Alcatraz, Naruto mused, making a note of the location of the seal's location before looking at the one that Kiba unfolded. So what's this then? A similar reverse summoning seal, but this one has a twin ready to go, Shikamaru said. Kiba, Akamaru, get Choji through first. Fine, Kiba snapped as he helped his partner get their large friend onto the seal. Their leader knelt down with a hiss at straining his injured leg, placing his hand on the paper and channeling chakra through it. The three on the parchment vanished in a flicker of light, making Naruto hum. Impressive, Naruto admitted as he stepped onto the seal. He yawned and scratched his right cheek. Can we get a move on before we get spotted? I mean, just because we're being quiet doesn't mean we can't be found. What, worried your plan might get ruined? Shikamaru sardonically asked as he pushed himself back onto his feet and stepped on the seal next to the blonde. Just shut up and do it, Naruto snapped. Shikamaru shrugged and began expelling chakra throughout the paper, making them flicker before they vanished. Wait, Jason interrupted, what happened to that giant parchment? We didn't see anything when we searched the camp. It's most likely still on the roof of the first cohort, Naruto replied with a shrug. Don't worry, I smeared a line with my chakra before I fully vanished. They can't use it. So where did you end up? Piper asked. The blonde looked over his shoulder to a large white building. There, Naruto answered with a shudder, the hospital of Konohagakure no Sato. As soon as they appeared in front of the building, Shikamaru turned to his captive and demanded, what did you do? I might have made it so you can't get back into Camp Jupiter, Naruto replied with a shrug. Shikamaru said nothing, crossing his arms. Behind him, four animal-designed, white mask-wearing warriors with light armor appeared, hands on the sword strapped to their back. The leading warrior, Owl, stepped forward and looked at Shikamaru. Is this him? Mission accomplished, Shikamaru said in English, reaching into his flak jacket for his pack of smokes. He walked away, looking once more over his shoulder at Naruto, who was scowling in annoyance. Owl looked back at Naruto and switched to English dialect. It is by the order of the Godame Hokage, Senju Tsunade, that you come with us into custody for questioning. Ha! I've got 2 words for that, fuck. You, Naruto snapped back. Owl reached out to grab Naruto's arm, only for Naruto to grab Owl's wrist hard enough to crack it. The blonde pulled Owl close and snarled, try to touch me again, and I'll snap your arm in half. I have orders, Owl retorted, gritting his teeth behind his mask. Sucks for you then, Naruto replied as he tossed Owl's arm away. He turned to walk off when Owl grabbed his shoulder with the same hand. Naruto stopped and looked up. No one ever listens. Before Owl could ask what he meant, Naruto had reached over and grabbed Owl's hand. Pulling Owl forward with a rough yank, Naruto dug his shoulder into Owl's armpit before he tugged roughly on the ANBU's arm. A second later, there was a pop and Owl released a scream of pain as his arm was dislocated. The blonde then wrapped his other arm around the already dislocated limb and bent the forearm over his own, earning a sickening snap. Owl gave an agonizingly pain-filled scream, to which Naruto scoffed, please, at least it's still attached. He shoved Owl off of him and let the ANBU stumble backward to the ground. His team tensed and moved to attack when Naruto looked at them. A grin spread across his face and he asked, do you really want to try and take me on? Don't just stand there. Owl snapped as he backed up to a knee, arrest dash. Stuff it. Naruto interrupted the ANBU with a thrust kick to the chest, kicking him through the side of the white building. When the smoke and dust cleared, the blonde demigod was satisfied to see Owl lying on his back on the ground, people gathering around him. Naruto turned back to the ANBU and asked, again, do you really want to take me on? The 3 ANBU looked ready to attack but were held back by the arrival of another. The man had gravity-defying silver hair and his face was hidden by a mask and his headband adorned with the same kanji that Shikamaru, Kiba and Choji had on theirs. The newcomer looked at the ANBU and said, I've been put in charge of this, you are all dismissed. Go check on Owl. The ANBU shared looks with one another before vanishing in blurs. The man shook his head before turning to Naruto and asking him. What's up, Naruto? Kakashi asked as he appeared in a cloud of smoke, a new book on Greek mythology in his hands. Jason and Piper looked surprised at the arrival while Naruto looked annoyed at being interrupted. You! Talia exclaimed with shock and anger, getting the younger demigods to look at her. Ignoring them, she reached for her mace canister and prepared for a fight, you're the creep that attacked us outside of Antiothres. Actually I didn't do anything, Kakashi corrected as he looked up from his book. His eye locked on Zephyr and calmly he said, I don't know if you know this, but your horse is on fire. He's a special kind of summon, Naruto explained before asking, is she finally ready to see me? She's managed to sober up a bit, Kakashi replied with a shrug, but you should be warned that her aides are still with her. Well, this is going to be fantastic then, the blonde groaned. He looked at Zephyr apologetically, I need you to stay out of sight for a bit, Zephyr. Go wait atop that building. Zephyr followed his master's point and then returned his flame-filled gaze to Naruto, nodding. Zephyr whinnied and reared back before shooting off into the sky, a trail of fire behind him. Kakashi blinked and shrugged, he'd seen weirder than a fiery horse take off into the sky when he was in the war. That was awesome, Piper said with a grin. Jason nodded and Talia begrudgingly agreed that the takeoff looked better when not part of it. The blonde sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose before looking at Kakashi. Let's go get this over with, Naruto said, getting a nod from his former teacher. Kakashi turned around and led the four to a large red building with a pale orange tiling rooftop. It was about 60 feet in height and rounded, giving it a width of, once more, about 60 feet. There was a large circle above the entrance with a strange symbol carved into it. Naruto caught their curious gazes at the symbol and explained, the kanji for fire, you'll see it a lot because that is the name of this land. Hai no kuni, Talia muttered, I remember you telling me about it. I just never expected it to be so green. It was named such for the weather, Kakashi answered while turning another page in his book, always warm, usually clear skies save for the occasional clouds. Here we are, Naruto said as he put his hand on the massive building's door and pushed it open while Kakashi got the other. The three newcomers were surprised that after the door was opened there was a large wall not 10 feet from them. Adorning the side of the wall were 5 large pictures of 4 men and 1 woman, more of the strange language written beneath the frames. This is the Hokage mansion, Kakashi explained, each Hokage lives here during their role as village leader, and depending on the person it can be either a short stay or one for the rest of their life. From left to right are the 1st to 5th Hokage. First, Hashirama Senju. He doesn't look as serious as he does on the mountain, Naruto mused, referring to the smiling face that greeted every newcomer to the Hokage mansion. Next came his younger brother, Tobirama Senju, Kakashi said, gesturing to the image of the white-haired man, and no, he wasn't old. That's just how his hair was. It's normal for people here to have strange colored hair, Naruto explained to the confused Piper and Jason. Talia recalled the other shinobi she met 6 months prior and shuddered at the thought of the girl with pink hair. That was natural. After him came the first student, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the aloof shinobi said as he pointed at the slightly older-looking man with a pointed goatee. Naruto smiled fondly at the picture, remembering the last few years of his pseudo-grandfather's life. And then came Naruto's dad. Talia cut Kakashi off, glaring at the blonde with a small smile on his face. Jason whistled in awe while Piper gaped. The daughter of Aphrodite looked to the son of Apollo, getting a shake of the head, stating that now was not the time for answers of the Greek variety. I was going to say my sensei, Kakashi grumbled, making Talia swivel her gaze to him in surprise while Naruto's eyes rolled. Something that would have been awesome to know while training, the blonde said, getting a deadpan look from the man. You wouldn't shut up about it if I had said anything, retorted the silver-haired masked man. Naruto stuck his tongue out childishly at the accurate reply. So what if he had idolized the fourth before discovering his true identity? It wasn't that bad. And the last one? Jason asked. Kakashi cleared his throat and prepared to speak when a woman's shout in a foreign language cut him off. They're late. Is waiting for us, Naruto said with a smirk. He gestured to the stairs on the left and the 4 followed him up. After what felt like an hour of stair climbing, Kakashi finally broke away from the layers of stairs, leading them to another set of double doors that he opened. What was revealed made the 3 foreigners blink in surprise. It was a massive office with a couch to the far left, the same images in the welcoming hall on the wall above it. On the opposite wall was a large bookcase filled to the brim with its namesake. The large windows straight ahead of them gave a fantastic view of the large city-like village, which seemed to go on forever from where they stood. In front of the windows was a desk and standing on either side of the desk were 2 women. One looked very plain, yet pretty in the same manner that most secretaries did. 2 kind black eyes looked in their direction, matching her shoulder-length black hair. She wore a solid black yakuta with white lining. Sandaled heels covered her feet and in her arms was a pig wearing a pearl necklace and vest. That was hardly the strangest thing, as the other aide had bright pink hair, cut to the same length. Talia immediately recognized her as one of the four that had attacked them outside of Mtiathres, and it put her on edge. In order to keep her cool and not attack the pink-haired weirdo, she shifted her gaze to the last woman at the same time that Piper and Jason did. The three demigods from the United States felt their eyes widen at the sight of the woman that sat behind the desk. She had pale blonde hair with shoulder-length bangs, honey brown eyes that were narrowed in their direction, and in the center of her forehead was a purple diamond. However, what surprised them the most was everything below her face, primarily the massive mounds on her chest. The image in the hallway was cut off at the Hokage's necks, leaving her chest size a mystery. So the sight of the pale blonde woman's watermelons, still thankfully covered by her gray kimono and green jacket, threw them for a loop. Piper was wondering how that was anatomically possible, considering their size in comparison to the woman's head was only less by a margin. Talia was too shocked to even think coherently, though she did wonder what Tsunade did to get them that big. Jason, being a hormonal young teenage male, just thought one word as his face lit up bright red: damn. The three were shaken from their stupor when the woman grabbed the stapler on her desk and chucked it towards them. Naruto's hand shot up and caught it before it could hit him in the face, lowering it with a look of annoyance on his face. Tossing the impromptu weapon back, the guardian asked, "What did I do to earn a stapler being thrown at my face?" "You know damn well what you did." The woman retorted with a glare, "Explanations are well overdue, brat. I have a name, Bachan." Naruto shot back with a frown as he crossed his arms. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. "All right then, Namikaze." "Uzumaki," corrected the blonde as he stepped further into the room. Talia, Jason and Piper all exchanged glances before following his example and walking in. This earned the woman's attention. "Who the hell are they?" she asked. Naruto rolled his eyes. "They are my team." "You already have a team, idiot," the pink-haired woman shouted while the woman behind the desk and the other aide gained baffled looks. "That team broke up more than 10 years ago, Sakura," Naruto snapped, when the Uchiha shoved his hand through my chest. "But you dash. Just save it." "I'm not here to talk to you," Naruto cut Sakura's retort off before looking at the woman behind the desk. Standing in front of the desk at attention, Naruto said, "I have to resign." You could hear a pin drop twice over it became so quiet. The dark-haired aide was the first of the four natives to recover, and "Naruto, you can't be serious." The blonde demigod sighed and felt the depression build up within him as he addressed her. "Dead serious, Shizun," Naruto said to the woman, making her fumble her arms as she nearly dropped the pig. "Careful, don't drop Tun-Tun. Explain." "Now," Tsunade curtly said once she recovered from her shock. "It's too difficult to explain and you wouldn't believe it if I told you," the blonde sighed out. "Just let me resign." "It's not that simple, brat." Tsunade snapped. 8 years ago you would have never said the word resign. Hell, I was under the assumption you didn't know what it meant. "I know what the word means," Naruto said in annoyance as he put his hands on her desk. "Gods damn it, do you know how hard this is for me? I don't want to sever my connection here, but you are forcing my hand by sending people after me. I have a different contract I am obligated to fulfill, and damn it, you are going to sign your own death warrant if you keep trying to take me away from it." "What the hell are you talking about, brat? Talk with some sense," Tsunade demanded. Naruto grabbed at his head with a groan before recomposing himself. Taking a deep breath, the blonde calmly said, "I am Naruto Uzumaki, son of Apollo, god of the sun." The room was once again speechless. There was a thump and Piper turned to see Kakashi with his book holding hand empty, the book on the ground. The first to recover this time was the Hokage, who grabbed the blonde's shirt and pulled him down to look her in the eye. "Who told you that load of bullshit?" Tsunade asked with narrowed eyes. "Your father's name was Minato Namikaze, which was an alias of Apollo's," replied the blonde. "I told you that you wouldn't believe me, because it's a load of horseshit," snapped the Hokage. Naruto glared at her, since he couldn't lie and that even trying to would get him even further interrogated, and she glared back in disbelief. The two remained silent after that exchange, glaring at each other. Their contest of wills was broken when the doors were thrown open and two old people, a man and woman, entered. They both had long white robes on and the scowl of a tired warrior on their faces. The woman smiled lightly in Naruto's direction before looking to Tsunade. "Congratulations, Tsunade-sama, you've brought our village's hero home. Now, we must prepare him for—" "Hold it there, Grandma," Naruto interjected with a scowl. "Last I checked this was a private meeting. A meeting for what? The woman asked briskly. My resignation, Naruto nonchalantly replied. The two looked aghast at the sentence before the old man stepped forward. Now see here, you fool. You are our Jinchuriki, our strongest defense, and like your mother you will do your duty. You do not talk about my mother. Snarled the blonde, focusing his killing intent on the elders. You don't even think about my mother, do you understand me? We have ways of making you cooperate, the man said. He looked to the sole shinobi in the room and said, get Yamato in here. So he can do what? Grow a tree around me. What good would that do? Naruto retorted with a snort. He grabbed the edge of his shirt and lifted it up, revealing his bare and toned stomach to the room. The blonde then, see this? I'm flaring my chakra and nothing is showing up. What does that tell you? Where is the Kyuubi, boy? The old woman demanded once she had recovered from her stunned state. It is the weapon of Konohagakure no Sado dash. The hell it is. I don't remember hearing about anyone other than an Uzumaki being able to handle the Kyuubi. If it should belong to anyone, it's me. He rounded back on the old man and jabbed his finger into the elder's chest with each word that followed. In short, fuck. You don't have the right to do this. The power of the Kyuubi no Kitsune belongs to Konoha. The elder retorted after stumbling back a bit. We were given it by the Shodai Hokage. He didn't have the right to disperse the Biju to begin with and probably regretted doing so after it happened. In my opinion, the Kyuubi belongs to whomever it wants to belong to, and if you can't accept it then tough tits. Naruto shot back, his bracelet gleaming unnoticed in the bright room. The demigods were standing in a stunned silence, Piper at the way the blonde continued to rant, and the two gray siblings at how volatile Naruto could be when he wanted to. So there. Naruto finished by crossing his arms and sticking his tongue out at the two elders, giving them a raspberry. The others in the room resisted the urge to palm their own faces at his sudden jump to a childish response. The elders on the other hand were furious, both red-faced and embarrassed at being refused a vital asset. The woman began again, Namikaze-sama, we need the Kyuubi in the upcoming war dash. Don't make me kill you, because I will if you keep pushing me. Naruto cut her off. I'll make what I did to Danzo look like child's play in comparison. The two immediately narrowed their eyes. You lie. Nope. Naruto shot back with a smirk as his unique eyes gleamed. I blew his head the fuck up. It was all over the walls. Brains, Sharingan eye. That certainly got the two to frown as they quickly left the room, Naruto's threat still hanging in the air and fresh in their minds. The rest of the silent room stared at the tense blonde like he was a bomb waiting to go off. After the doors closed with a slam, Naruto turned back to Tsunade and pulled the metal clip from his belt, slamming the insignia face down into the Hokage's desk. I resign. Naruto stated firmly. Tsunade stared down at the forehead protector in horror. When she got word that Naruto refused to come home, she wouldn't believe it. She never once expected him to be serious about this, that maybe it was all leading up to a grand prank of some sort. When he started to rant nonsense, Tsunade understood that it was happening, that Naruto was severing his ties with the village. Still, a part of her wouldn't back down. In a desperate attempt to keep a strong warrior, and a pseudo-son, in her village, Tsunade looked back up at the whiskered teen and asked, what about your dream to be Hokage? As he brought his hand back, Naruto stiffened at the question. His unique sun-filled eyes gave her a look that made Tsunade realize this was a lost cause, and his words only cemented that. I wanted to be Hokage primarily for acknowledgement, so that people would see me and not my burden. I have found a way to achieve it outside of here, why would I want to leave that behind? With a smile that lit up the room he continued, I even found someone that will go against the odds to stand at my side. Someone I could spend the rest of my life with. Talia's cheeks dusted pink, but a small smile came to her face. She was still mad at him, there was no doubt about that, but that line? Her knucklehead could be real smooth when he wanted to be. I suppose there's no delaying it any further. Tsunade reluctantly sighed out. Sakura, go and get Genin Uzumaki's file. Tsunade-sama, you can't seriously be thinking about accepting his resignation. Shizen said with wide eyes. Sakura had a matching look on her face, whereas Kakashi, who picked his book back up, had gained a small look of depressed acceptance. He had hoped that Naruto might want to return, but as long as the blonde was happy then there was nothing more he could ask for. The Godame Hokage shifted her gaze from the blonde to her loyal aide. Do you think I want to? Unfortunately, the law is the law, and as a genin, Naruto has the right to resign from his post without question. Looking back at the blonde demigod, Tsunade asked, "Is there anything else, Uzumaki-san?" "There is one more thing," Naruto said as he reached into his back pouch and pulled out a vial of green and black liquid. Placing it on the desk, Naruto said, "I need a cure for this." "You have balls to ask me for a favor after what you just did, you brat," replied the Hokage with a frown. "Why should I waste my time on a little vial you claim has a disease?" "You owe me," simply replied the blonde. "And how the hell do you figure that?" Tsunade snapped, making the demigods cringe at the anger and look at the blonde. Surprisingly, he kept his cool rather than explode like he did moments ago. "Would you even be in this village if it weren't for me and Ero-sanin?" Naruto asked as a brow quirked. "Don't you bring him into this." "And that's irrelevant to the point," Tsunade argued. "Is it?" Naruto asked as he looked to Shizune. "Shizune, if we never came and retrieved you and Tsunade, where would you be in 10 years? Enjoying a free life without worrying about debt collectors catching up to you and your hungover teacher?" "Well," Shizune shifted uncomfortably as all eyes went to her. In defeat, she hung her head and softly answered, "No." Naruto looked back at Tsunade, getting an annoyed growl from the pale blonde. Before either of them could speak, Sakura interrupted and said, "Shursho doesn't have to do you a favor, idiot." The blonde demigod snapped a glare onto her form. "I wasn't talking to you. Weren't you supposed to be getting my files anyway?" Sakura looked livid, but a stern glare from Tsunade, who realized that Naruto had a point with his question, had forced her to keep her mouth shut. As she left the office in a huff, Sakura sent brief looks of anger to the three demigods, considering it their fault that Naruto had changed. With the pink-haired woman out of the office, Naruto looked back at Tsunade and said, "If there is anything left of the Uzumaki in you, you will help me. If not for your kin, then for the young girl who is stricken with this disease that I promised I would cure." Tsunade's eyes narrowed. "A girl? It's her blood that is set before you," the blonde informed the medical genius. "You'd better not be making this up," crisply warned the Hokage. "I swear on my mother's name that it is a patient in need of desperate help." "If it were anything else, I wouldn't have bothered coming back," Naruto replied. He hoped the play on Tsunade's maternal instincts and her pride as a doctor would sway this in his favor. If not, well, then he can kiss Bianca goodbye as well as his soul for eternal damnation. Hades was very, very protective of his children and very bitter to those that failed him. Tsunade kept a hard gaze locked on Naruto before looking down at the green liquid within the vial he had set before her. She grabbed it and held it up to her eye with a scrutinizing gaze before looking back up at him. "I'll do it," Tsunade said as she put down the vial and pointed at him, "but this is the last thing I'm doing for you, brat." Naruto smiled in relief and bowed his head. Quietly so that only the woman before him could hear, he affectionately said, "Arigato bachan." Yeah, just get out of here before I change my mind," waved off the woman. Naruto stood upright before turning to leave. He nodded to the demigods and they followed him, making Tsunade's brow furrow. After the four teens had left the room, Tsunade spoke to the man reading in the corner, "Kakashi, keep your eye on them. They have something to do with this." The older girl was one of the few Team Kakashi faced in the foreign land, chimed in the Jonin informatively. "She and Naruto seem close. Watch them," Tsunade said as her eyes went back to the vial in her hand. The silver-haired shinobi vanished in an explosion of smoke without another word. With honey-brown eyes narrowing on the dark green and black liquid, Tsunade mumbled, "Just what has that brat been up to?" Chapter 14. Naruto exited the Hokage mansion with a light smile on his face. "Well, that went better than I expected it to." "What did you expect?" Jason asked. "Jail time. More like downright execution," Naruto replied with a shrug. "I certainly earned it. It was probably my personal history with Tsunade that saved me from that." "What was that thing you called her?" Piper asked curiously as they started to walk through the village. "Bachan, what does that mean?" "Bachan is the equivalent to old lady," once again shrugged the eldest blonde present, making the two younger demigods look at him like he was crazy. The woman didn't look any older than 30, 35 at best. As they turned down a fenced pathway that would take them back to the academy, Jason scrutinized the teen with an odd look. "You have issues with authority, don't you? Are you just now noticing?" Naruto retorted with a roll of his eyes. "It's going to get you killed one day," Helios said chidingly. "It'll be worth it," shot back the incarnation as a smirk crossed his face. Piper and Jason walked behind the older two demigods, taking in the sights and slowing down their pace consequently. The blonde looked to his girlfriend, who was now walking along his left side, and lightly nudged her arm. "You're awfully quiet." Talia simply gave him a look from the corner of her eye and then returned her gaze forward. Naruto frowned at the raven-haired girl's cold shoulder, prompting him to look ahead before he spoke again. I know that no amount of apologies could ever make what I did right, Taliya-chan. Nothing I say can make this better, we both know that. Just know that even if you decide to hate me forever, I will still love you. Taliya turned to look at her boyfriend, opening and closing her mouth to say something. Gods, why did he have to have such a silver tongue? Then again, he had a really skilled tongue. If their makeout sessions were anything to go by, she was getting off track. She opened her mouth to really talk, in order to get off what was on her chest. Before Taliya could even begin, a familiar annoying voice addressed the blonde first, Naruto. The four demigods stopped walking and turned around to see the pink-haired aide running towards them. Naruto groaned and pinched the bridge of his nose as the woman came to a stop in front of them. Why did you resign? Sakura demanded. Moving to stand in front of the other three, Naruto defended himself. I told you. I have other duties as the son of Apollo. The pink-haired woman growled, don't be an idiot, Naruto. There is no god of the sun. Oh, that little bitch. If I still had a physical body and most of my godly power, I would smite the holy Tartarus out of her. Helios began to rage. Don't let him hear you say that, Naruto mumbled as he reached up to rub his head from the headache Helios was giving him. What kind of idiot believes they're the child of a god? Continued Sakura. I dunno, maybe the same kind of idiot who promises to risk his life to save someone that doesn't want to be saved. Snidely replied the blonde. You were trying to help your friend. Sakura exclaimed. Yeah, and he put his fist through my fucking lung in return. Naruto said with narrowed eyes, after I forced him to miss my heart. He was under the influence of the curse mark, Sakura argued. I beg to differ, retorted the son of Apollo. He seemed pretty coherent when he was driving my skull through the ground from 50 feet in the air. This isn't like you. Sakura announced. The Naruto I knew wouldn't just abandon his friends for a bunch of delusional kids. Jason, Piper and Taliya all glared at the woman for her response. Taliya pushed forward to stand next to Naruto, speaking for the first time since leaving the Hokage's office with an angry tone. Who are you calling a kid? Just stay out of this, Sakura snapped with a glare at the raven-haired girl. You're part of the reason he's acting so stupid. Maybe he's uncomfortable around the girl that used to brain him 24/7 to compensate for her boardwalk-sized forehead. Taliya shot back. Who do you think you are? Demanded the pink-haired medic with narrowed green eyes locked on the slightly shorter girl's form. Her eyes drifted down briefly and narrowed even further in slight jealousy before moving back up to meet the electric blue that were glaring at her. Taliya crossed her arms over her chest and replied, I'm the idiot's girlfriend. You? Sakura repeated in disbelief. After looking her over once again, the pink-haired woman looked at Naruto and said, Didn't think you went for them, that young pervert. She's actually 19, Naruto corrected with a frown at the shot at his girlfriend and himself. And she is standing right here, Taliya interjected with a scowl. Naruto wisely shut up. Sakura, however, did not catch the hint. Why don't you go run along and look around? Sakura snorted out as she cracked her knuckles and turned to Naruto. I have some unfinished business to deal with. Konoha business. What, you too afraid to get your ass handed to you with an audience? Taliya said with a smirk, just like he did back at Mtiathres. Sakura seemed to falter at that before regaining her fire. Didn't I see you run away on that sleigh? Naruto winced and Taliya growled before speaking again. At least I'm not mistaken for being a boy. And what is that supposed to mean? The pink-haired medic asked dangerously. Taliya-chan? Naruto said, putting a hand on his girlfriend's shoulder, I think you've made your point. No, don't make her stop now, Naruto. Said Sakura as she glared at Taliya, who returned it with equal amounts of anger. Let her explain herself. What's to explain? Taliya countered, you're flatter than a board. Sakura clenched her fist and glared at the raven-haired girl as her face turned red in embarrassment. So she was lacking in the chest area, so what? That didn't give this little bitch the right to call her out on it. Before she knew it, Sakura had thrown a punch charged with all the chakra that was needed for an Okasha right at the girl's face. Another hand caught hers and she felt herself get shoved back to the ground. Looking up, she saw that it was Naruto who had caught her fist, his body engulfed in golden flames. Naruto, you jackass! Sakura screamed at the blonde as she got back to her feet. I said I wasn't here to deal with you, but it looks like I don't have a choice. The second you attacked Taliya-chan, you forced my hand, Naruto said as he looked at the pink-haired woman. As his eyes narrowed, he raised his left hand and snapped his fingers. After seconds passed, Sakura looked at him and asked, what was the point of that? your useless fingers snap. Her eyes widened and Naruto grinned foxily as his golden flames flickered out. Sakura tried again, you think you've won, there's no evidence as to what you've done. What is wrong with me, why do all my sentences end poetically? This is hilarious, Helios said before bursting into laughter. Behind Naruto, the three demigods began to do the same. Yeah, enjoy that, the blonde said to the increasingly red-faced Kunoichi, it should wear off in a few days, a week at the most. A week at the most, this had better wear off Uzumaki or you're going to be toast. Raged the pink-haired woman as he turned away. Frustrated, Sakura stood and tried to rush Naruto from behind only to get stopped as Taliah drove her own fist into the woman's gut. The wind was knocked out of her, making Sakura double over. For good measure, Taliah added a sparking punch right to her protected forehead, making the pink-haired medic's head snap back as she fell to the ground once more. Piper giggled, talk about a thunder punch. It was super effective, Jason commented with a wince as he thought about how the metal on the woman's head had to conduct the electricity through it. Piper burst into laughter and Jason furrowed his brow, what's so funny? Thunder punch, super effective. Piper giggled out, shoving the boy lightly, good one. Good what? The confused teenager asked. The girl giggled again before looking at the genuine confusion on Taliah's brother's face. Wow, you're really sheltered, aren't you? Piper said in astonishment. As Piper explained the unintentional joke Jason made, Naruto looked at his girlfriend and asked, was that necessary? No, Taliah admitted as she rolled her wrist, but it felt really good. Talk about a mean right hook, Helios commented before wondering aloud, that reminds me, I wonder how the kids are taking it back at camp. I'm sure they're just relaxing after a hard day of training, Naruto thought as he waved the concern off. Annabeth and her group had exited the labyrinth moments ago to a giant desert, and after walking across what Grover revealed to be a cattle grate, found a herd of Apollo's red cattle. It revealed that they were on a ranch of some sort. Soon enough they met the owner of the ranch, a man with 3 chests noticeable by the 3 different colored shirts, 2 arms and humongous legs covered by leaves that would give redwood trees a run for their money. A tanned head sat on the center of the 3 chests, black hair slicked back and a pencil-thin mustache above his lips. He said his name was Geryon. Apparently, Geryon was a businessman who cared only for money, evident by the poor conditions some of the other caged animals were in, much to Grover's ire. He reminded the original members of the quest for the Master Bolt and Nico of Hades' ferryman, Sharon. He was just as sly, too, convincing to let them pass without alerting the Titan's forces if one of them performed a task of Heracles, cleaning his carnivorous steed stables. Percy volunteered, figuring that his lineage with the god of the seas would help in the task. As soon as Percy was led away, the others met the immortal son of Ares and Geryon's herdsman, Eurytion. He was a tall, muscled cowboy with white hair and a thick white beard that made him look like Father Time, if Father Time had decided to move to Texas. After a pleasant chat, Eurytion surprised the rest of the group and bound them tightly in ropes. When I get out of this, you're gonna be sorry. Nico raged as he struggled with his binds. He then grumbled under his breath, I can't believe Percy is escaping this because he's scooping poop. They all say that, Eurytion grumbled as he rolled his eye, dropping Grover next to a whimpering Tyson. Are you using Apollo's cattle to feed monsters for the crooked one? Annabeth asked as she watched one of the red cows chew on grass. Eurytion shifted uncomfortably as he looked up, making Annabeth gape, you are? It's the finest source of meat on the planet, Eurytion mumbled with an uncomfortable shrug, and it's not like I have any choice in the matter. Choice in what matter? Geryon asked as he walked back to the group. Eurytion went quiet as his boss returned, prompting the rancher to jerk his head in the cattle's direction. Don't you have a job to do? Sorry boss, the son of Ares grumbled as he walked away. Geryon shook his head, that buffoon, takes after his father, that one. You're feeding Apollo's cattle to the Titan army? Annabeth asked him while shifting in her binds. Her hands reached for a hidden kunai in her jeans belt loop, concealed by her shirt. Nico and Grover saw the handle and started to struggle with their own binds, covering their slight movement towards their quest leader in an effort to hide her plan. Geryon looked at the blonde girl with a smirk, what? Are you going to tell him through prayer? If the god of prophecy doesn't know by now that I'm feeding his cattle to the Titans in return for payment, then he deserves the accusations that he is an imbecile. And what about his kids? Annabeth prompted, what are you going to do when they find out? Most of his children hold little love for him, scoffed the monster nonchalantly. You obviously haven't met Naruto then, Grover snorted. Nico grinned and continued, yeah, he may make fun of his dad, but there's no one Naruto looks to more for guidance. Who is this Naruto? Geryon asked haughtily, another child of a no-named whore. You take that back. Nico shouted angrily. Kushina was as close as a second mother he was going to get since Persephone didn't get along with him or Bianca well. Even if she was a slave driver when it came to training. Naruto Uzumaki, Annabeth clarified, making the monster pause in thought, you may know him as the heir of Helios. Geryon looked slightly unruffled, quickly recomposing himself, well, it's a good thing he won't find out, seeing as you'll soon enough be in the Titan's hands. Not if Percy completes his task, Annabeth retorted. She had managed to unsheath the kunai Naruto had given her secondary weapon in case she ever dropped Luke's dagger. Looking past Geryon for a moment, she caught sight of Eurytion putting their gathered weapons into a shed filled to the brim with others. Geryon laughed before leaning down to get in the daughter of Athena's face. Who said anything about letting you go if he does the task? I never swore on the sticks. Why should I keep my word? You worthless piece of dash. Watch your tone, demigod, Geryon warned Nico with narrowed eyes, the protection of your parents does not stand here. All that's keeping you alive right now is your value. And frankly, I decide that value. As she glared at the monster, Annabeth managed to cut her wrists free, and now slowly started working on the rope around her arms and torso. She cut all ropes but one before shifting her arms in an attempt to loosen the binds. To throw Geryon off his guard, Annabeth asked, what if I told you I could summon the heir of Helios? You lie. Geryon snapped, looking unruffled once again at the thought of being discovered. I'm not, the young blonde daughter of Athena retorted, just one word and he'll be here faster than you can say size XXL. You wouldn't dare. I don't have to, Annabeth announced, I can take you myself. Before Geryon could come up with a witty reply, Annabeth snapped the last rope and freed herself, using her newfound freedom to attack the three-chested monster. Her first strike was a cut to his left leg, making Geryon cry out in shock as the bronze blade cut through his hide. The blonde girl used his shocked state to run towards the shed that was overflowing with weapons. Eurytion! Geryon called for his herdsman, kill the girl. Eurytion looked to where he last saw Annabeth, who had ducked into the shed, before looking back at his boss. With a scowl, he pointed at Geryon and said, hell no. You keep sending me out to do your dirty work. Picking fights for no good reason and making me finish it for you. Well, I'm done dying for you. You want the girl dead? Do it yourself. Geryon's eyes narrowed and he called out, Orthus. A massive two-headed dog that looked like a Doberman came from the herd, both heads had their ears up, with the left head having its tongue out. It went to Eurytion's side, getting an affectionate pat on the head from the immortal half-blooded son of Ares. Geryon gained a look of annoyance and pointed at Annabeth, who had returned from the shed with a belted pouch she was adjusting around her waist. Orthus! Kill that girl! The rancher insisted. Don't do it, Orthus. Eurytion cut in before the dual-headed dog would do just that. This is Geryon's fight. Looking at his boss, the son of Ares warned, if you try and chicken out again, we'll help her against you. Geryon scowled at the threat and opened his mouth to retort. Instead of a sneering warning, the three-chested monster let out a cry of pain, reaching up and grabbing at his shoulder. He pulled out a rather lengthy throwing knife he had taken from a lost demigod who was long since dead, a daughter of Hermes if he recalled correctly. Snapping his small eyes on the blonde-haired girl, Annabeth merely reached into the pouch once more, pulling out several similar blades in her hand. You do realize that this means nothing, Geryon sneered as he tossed the blade to the ground. The hole in his far right shoulder closed shut and the monster smirked, I cannot be defeated so easily, girly. My 3 hearts are the ultimate backup system, and it would take a miracle for such a small frail thing like you to stop me. Annabeth's eye twitched at the claim and she gave the monster a grimace before throwing her knives once again, this time aiming for his head. One grazed his left ear while the monster's hands caught the other 2. He tossed the blades down and gave another smug grin. Okay, Annabeth, what do we know about him? Annabeth asked herself as she threw another knife at Geryon's chest. He heals fast. He has 3 hearts, large legs and he's very slow. Obviously relies on regeneration if his taunts are anything to go by. So that means he's trying to make me tire myself out. Smart. So I can't trick him into killing himself like I could a bad Cyclops or another mindless monster. What does that leave me then? Geryon got tired of having to remove knives from his body and began stalking towards the daughter of Athena. Annabeth took note of this and reached into the pouch once more. This pouch doesn't feel like it's losing knives like it should be, Annabeth thought with mild confusion. She looked to the knives scattered across the ground and her eyes widened when one flashed before disappearing and a bit of weight was added to her pouch. A grin spread across Annabeth's face. Never-ending knife pouch. Oh, Naruto is going to be so jealous. Annabeth's grin vanished when she had to move out of the way of a swipe from the towering Geryon, rushing past him into the herd of red cattle. Eurytion and Orthus both moved out of the snarling Geryon's way as he stormed after her, the immortal demigod having a smug smirk on his face. Annabeth came to a stop behind a grazing cow, panting and trying to regain her breath from the run into the herd. She pulled another throwing knife out and slowly peeked out from her hiding spot. Geryon was turning and snarling, shoving Apollo's cattle out of his way as he failed to find the blonde girl. There's no way I could bring him down with a guerrilla tactic, mused the daughter of Athena. If this were any other enemy I would keep moving and throwing knives from behind different cows, but that won't work on him. I need to take out all three of his hearts in a quick and successive manner. If I had a bow I'd ask Apollo and Artemis for help. Wait. That's it. 3 hearts, 3 blades in quick succession should do it. But I have to get all the shots in at the same time from the same angle. Stepping out from her current hiding spot, Annabeth called out, Geryon. The monster swiveled from his place and snarled, there you are. Are you finally ready to die? I should be asking you the same thing, Annabeth retorted with a frown as she readied a knife in her right hand. Adorable, but sooner or later you're going to run out of knives, Geryon sneered, just surrender and I'll make it as painless as possible. The worst thing you could do in life is give up, Naruto said from a memory of their journey across country, which prompted Annabeth's eyes to harden into a cold steel shade of gray. Without another word, Annabeth pulled her right hand over her left shoulder. Closing her eyes for a split second, Annabeth prayed, Apollo, Artemis, please make my aim true. The knife left her hand after her eyes snapped open. A second knife left her left hand as the empty right pulled out another. The third knife flew from the daughter of Athena's grasp a second and a half behind the second knife. Annabeth watched in what seemed like slow motion as the knives struck their marks, the left chest being struck dead center, followed by the right and then finishing with the center. Geryon's eyes widened and he stumbled backwards. The monster looked down at his chest, the knives buried into each one with only half of the handles sticking out. Shakily, Geryon looked back at the equally surprised Annabeth, before stumbling backwards and falling to the ground. His hand lifted once more and he watched it as it slowly dissolved away into golden dust. Annabeth slowly felt a small grin spread across her face as Geryon dissolved into golden dust. Her grin fell as she walked forward and found nothing left behind. Nothing but the knives she had used to kill him. They vanished in a small flash of light, and she felt the weight return to the pouch on her hip. The daughter of Athena continued to smile after she returned to the other side of the cattle pen, eyeing Eurytion warily. The son of Ares gave her a grin and pat one of Orthus' heads, don't worry about us. Geryon lost, you're free to go. What about Percy? Annabeth asked with a frown. What about me? Percy asked as he walked into the area from the stables. Looking at the 3 still tied up and back to Annabeth and Eurytion, the son of Poseidon asked, did I miss something? You have no idea, seaweed brain, said Annabeth as her head shook. This is a nice outcome and all, but could someone untie us before we burn in the sun? Nico asked with a hint of annoyance. Once the other 3 members of the quest had been released from their binds, Eurytion offered to make them a meal in order to make up for the ordeal and to thank Annabeth for the idea of how to shift the ranch into his favor. They declined the meal, but agreed to a small snack and soda, allowing Percy to relax and tell them about his completed labor. When that was all said and done, Percy looked to Annabeth and asked, so how did you kill Geryon? 3 knives to the hearts, she answered with a shrug, with a little help from Naruto's dad and Artemis. So the rumors are true about Helios heir? Eurytion asked, leaning forward with a curious look on his face, a demigod who holds the soul of the fallen god? More than true, Percy said as he took a sip of the Mountain Dew he was given, Helios actually speaks to him. Eurytion whistled and sat back in his seat, that's a game changer, 2 souls in one body? Wonder what that's like. Apparently, really loud, Nico chimed in, recalling moments in January when Naruto would randomly just shout at nothing, claiming to be arguing with Helios. It stopped shortly after Bianca fell ill, but it was amusing when it happened. I would think so, Eurytion mused. He turned to Annabeth and asked, did Chiron teach you to throw like that? Naruto did, Annabeth replied with a small smile, he gave me the foundation of what I know today about combat. Really? Nico asked curiously. Tell us about it. Grover said eagerly. He loved hearing about his old group's earlier days. Eurytion scratched one of Ortha's heads as he listened intently, and Percy put his drink down, looking to the Soul Girl at the table. As she pulled a knife out of the pouch on her hip, Annabeth thought about the first night Naruto had shown her, Talia and Luke, how to properly throw a kunai. The first night she and Talia actually had more than a few words with each other. She spoke softly to the group sitting at the table. It was the night after we escaped the Calcus Bowl. Why would I want to throw my only weapon? Luke asked with a furrowed brow as Naruto helped Annabeth properly grip the knife. He had made it known that he did not agree with this lesson, that maybe turns with Naruto's bow would be more beneficial. Naruto had told him in response that no one but he was to touch the bow, because of the enchantment upon it. Annabeth knew it existed. She once touched it while Naruto slept and became ill for a day. From then on, Naruto kept a close eye on his bow, going as far as to sling it over his shoulder every time he went to sleep. It may not be your only weapon forever, Naruto replied with a sigh as he ducked under another throw from their resident lightning user. Talia-chan, how many times do I have to tell you to grip it firmly but lightly? How many times do I have to tell you to stop calling me that? Talia retorted with a frown. Naruto looked at his fellow blonde with a grin. What's the count, Annie? 37, Annabeth said with a smile to her pseudo-brother. Talia rolled her eyes at the two. Annabeth nearly always sided with Naruto in their arguments, unless it was silly or stupid. She also noticed that Annabeth seemed to smile every time that Naruto successfully annoyed her. Guess it'll take more than 37, Talia-chan, Naruto said with a smirk to the younger girl, who quickly averted her gaze. Annabeth frowned slightly, her finger slipping and accidentally cutting herself on the blade. Ow! She called out, dropping the kunai that was in her hand to the ground. Careful, Naruto warned as he returned his attention to the younger blonde. He knelt down and picked the small onyx-colored blade up, putting the knife away. Checking her finger wound, the older blonde smiled softly at Annabeth. It's just a small cut. Should be all better if you just wrap it up. What about an anesthetic? Luke asked. It could get infected. Naruto shook his head in disagreement. Not if we wash it off first. Come on, Annie, there's a stream over here we can clean it at. Naruto led Annabeth to the stream and gently guided her finger to the water. She hissed in pain as the water coursed over it, and did so once again when Naruto blew lightly on the cut to dry the damp finger. From his shirt, Naruto tore a piece of cloth and wrapped it tightly around the injury. Talia and Luke, who followed the other two demigods, were silent in awe at the care Naruto showed to the younger blonde girl's finger. Tying off the cloth, Naruto grinned at Annabeth and pat her on the head. See? Easy fix. Annabeth smiled at him thankfully, throwing her arms around his neck and surprising him with a tight hug. Naruto hugged the girl back, his smile still in place. Ah, look at you, Luke teased, just a lovable old teddy bear. Pushing the younger daughter of Athena back out of the hug, Naruto spoke softly. Annie, I need to go kill Luke, you stay here for a second. Annabeth giggled as Naruto stood and then ran at the other boy, who yelped impressively before he turned tail and ran, leaving her alone with the equally amused Talia. Annabeth's giggles died down and Talia shook her head, looking to the younger girl with a smile. Boys, am I right? Annabeth looked at Talia with a small frown, making the older girl furrow her brow. Hey, are you okay? Then it gets a little fuzzy, Annabeth said apologetically to the group, making them sigh in disappointment. The daughter of Athena smiled reassuringly. Hey, don't worry. I'm sure I was just a little nervous at being alone with Talia. What the others didn't know was that this was a lie that Annabeth had made up when she realized what she was feeling years after it happened. Annabeth thought back with small pink-tinted cheeks at her possessiveness of Naruto. Annabeth had a glare locked on the older girl, one of accusation as she related the interactions between Naruto and Talia to the brief interactions Naruto had with a minor goddess Irene back in San Francisco. The goddess of peace had offered to help Annabeth get to a safe place as long as Naruto stayed with her in San Francisco, insisting that he had had enough fighting in his life already. Naruto declined kindly, but after that meeting Annabeth was wary of other older fluzzies. She didn't know how to properly say or think floozy at the time around her brother. Don't think I don't know what you're up to. Annabeth announced accusingly. You're trying to take Naruto away. What? Talia asked in surprise, her cheeks flushing. No, I'm not. Yeah, you are. The young blonde girl exclaimed with a scowl on her face. He's my brother and you can't have him. I don't want him. Talia groaned as her cheeks darkened. You do so. Annabeth retorted as her eyes narrowed. You're just lying so that when you take him away it'll look like he wanted to go. Where are you getting this information? Talia asked. Because it's wrong. I'm not wrong, you're just trying to throw me off guard. Annabeth announced with a pout, you're trying to take him away from me. Well, Naruto belongs to me, he's my big brother and not anyone else's, got that? Wow, really making some assumptions aren't you? Talia asked. Pinching the bridge of her nose, Talia tiredly tried to explain, listen Annabeth, I don't want Naruto to be my big brother and I don't want to take him away from you. You're lying, insisted the daughter of Athena. No, I'm not. Talia shouted out, a bolt of lightning landing behind her as her emotions got the best of her. Annabeth jumped slightly, but stood her ground. The two glared at each other before Talia sighed and said, look, Annabeth, you're a sweet girl. You obviously care about Naruto a lot and he cares about you. If it makes you feel better, I'll stop talking to him. Good. Annabeth said with a firm nod. But that doesn't mean I'll ignore him if he talks to me first, Talia added. Annabeth pouted but crossed her arms, fine. Can't say I blame you, Percy interjected, snapping Annabeth from the rest of the memory as he took another sip of his Mountain Dew. Setting the now empty can down, the son of Poseidon looked at Eurytion and asked, do you have an idea of how to find Hephaestus? You're asking the right guy, the son of Ares replied. Grinning at the two, he continued, well, can't say I do want to give this gift up, but I figure you guys can use it more than me. Not to mention that I owe the both of you for taking care of the carnivorous steed's crap and killing Geryon. Eurytion left the group of 5 and went to the shed, quickly returning with something in his hand that made Annabeth cry out in surprise, spider. Easy, easy. The son of Ares said as he set the small machine down on the table. The still unnerved daughter of Athena looked at the machine warily while Eurytion said, this little thing should lead you right to my uncle. He gave it to me after I helped him prank my father. That sounds like an interesting story, Percy said, only to get nudged by Annabeth. The daughter of Athena looked for a brief second at the spider before looking at the herdsman with an apologetic smile. Thank you, Eurytion, but we really need to get going. She then looked at the spider again, her heart racing as she did. Just because it was not real did not mean it wasn't as terrifying. I'll take it, Nico said as he rolled his eyes at Annabeth's reaction to the small guide. The son of Hades took the metallic spider and the 5 departed from Triple G Ranch the way that they came, leaving behind an amused Eurytion who then turned and went back to taking care of his uncle's cattle. Properly, that is. That's it for part 11. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.